testimony night. And so I just want you to put your hands together for KJ.
How's it going, everybody? I'm so glad to see the Spirit of God moving already in this place. For those of you who don't know me, I'm KJ. Sinner saved by grace and blessed and grateful addict in recovery. It's been a while since I've had the opportunity to get up here and actually share with everybody. So if I make a fool out of myself, please have grace. I got the awesome opportunity to be the first of a series of testimonies shared here at Overcomers. So I guess to tell you where I am, I have to start at the beginning and tell you where I came from. So I was born in a little town about 30 miles south of Atlanta to a very loving family. My mom and dad were steady churchgoers. My dad was actually an ordained minister. So I had a really strong foundation in the faith at a real young age. About 9 years old, my dad passed away of arterial sclerosis. It's the hardening of the arteries to the point where the heart can't pump blood. He pretty much died of a massive heart attack at 43. So my dad was here one minute and gone the next. And to a 9-year-old young male just developing role model figures in their life, it was an extremely traumatic event for me. From that point on, I had this deep, resounding resentment to everyone and everything, and even to God. Like, why now, why me, why him? And that animosity and resentment turned into fuel later on in my life, and not the kind of fuel that you want. At 12, I was still trying to find a true male role model to show me how to walk life out. And I found role models, but not any positive ones. I found them all in the wrong places: gang members, drug dealers, you name it. And because of the company that I decided to keep around and the choices that I made in my life from 13 to 17, I spent the better half of 2 years bouncing in and out of RYDCs, group homes, juvenile youth detention centers, and at such a young age going through the judicial system, I became numb to it. It didn't affect me anymore. It was just like, here's another one, here's another stint, here's another one. At 17, God reached into my life and gave me one of the most beautiful blessings that I have ever received. It didn't come about the way I wanted it to, and it didn't come about the way most people plan it to. But God gifted me with a special little girl. My daughter is now 9 years old. But we were gonna have her out of wedlock, and I tried to do the right thing in my mind, and I got married to the mother of my child. So married by 17, dropped out of high school, trying to attempt to take care of a new family, and still dealing with the criminal and addictive behaviors that I had previously developed from the lifestyle that I was living. Me and my ex-wife were both, at the time when we conceived, we were both still active users, active meth users actually. We both got clean under the pretense of trying to do it right for our daughter. I was still under that addictive mentality that, like, I can smoke weed and drink beer on the weekends and everything's gonna be okay. As long as I'm not doing the hard stuff, I'll be okay. And that caused problems in the relationship, it caused problems in my personal life, it caused problems in my work life. By the time I had actually turned 18, old enough to actually, like, have a real beer. I was already married, divorced, and dropped out of high school. At 18, having no real understanding of what a real man was and how to really walk through life, I just went off the deep end. I thought that the only thing that I had ever truly valued had been taken away from me. Because my ex-wife had gotten herself together. She's still an amazing mom. And she gave me an ultimatum: either you clean your life up or you can't be a part of your daughters. And at the time I resented her for it, and it caused a lot of animosity between me and her at the time. And looking back on it, I'm grateful that she did what she did, because I was a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. And she had the foresight to see that when I did explode, I wasn't just going to hurt myself, I was going to hurt everyone else around me. And my daughter didn't need to be subject to that. But between the animosity that I still harbored from losing my father, now I had lost another loved one close to me. My only real, spirit, my hope, my joy. I went further back off the deep end. I started using hard drugs again. Ended up meeting my son's mom. And I was telling myself the whole time that I'm never going to get in a relationship again. I'm never going to have that pain again. I'm never going to get married again, go through that again. After 2 years, we ended up conceiving my son. So by 20, I had been married, divorced, dropped out of school, had another kid out of wedlock, and was still actively using meth, marijuana, alcohol, anything. I was human garbage disposal. If you hand it to me, I'll take it. And that, I quickly tried to mask the addictive behavior with my son's mom. And as we all know with masks, eventually they crack and they break. Eventually the person that you're putting that mask on for can see the real you. And what she saw when that mask came off, she didn't want to put my son through dealing with that. So by the time I was 20, 21, me and her had split up. My son was a week old when she split. And another one that at the time I had a lot of animosity for, I had a lot of pain and resentment for, but I didn't, looking back, I understand why. That just added more fuel to the fire of the destruction that was going to become my life. I went on trying to maintain this soberish lifestyle for roughly a year. And of course the criminal behavior inside of me ended up getting me back in trouble, getting back in the judicial system. And this time I was doing big boy time. And by this point in my life, I hadn't seen my mom in 7 years, hadn't talked to her in 5. I hadn't seen my daughter in 3, hadn't seen or talked to her in 3 years. Last time I seen her, she was 3 years old. My son was a week old the last time I saw him. And I was spiraling out of control in all the wrong ways. I'll spare you the gory details, but I was in way over my head doing things I should have never been doing. And I ended up how can I put this? So I ended up surrounding myself with all the wrong people again, and in a crowd of people I somehow managed to feel completely alone. Had tons of people over, tons of friends over all the time, and still every second of every day I felt absolutely alone. By the end of 2021, I had bounced in and out of jail 4 or 5 different times. I had made a lot of money, lost a lot of money, became homeless, and then realized that I didn't really have anybody truly in my life that I could call a friend or could count on. My last stint in jail, they're like, look, we're going to give you a 30-day violation, and I told the judge, just execute my time. Send me to prison or I'm going to die. If you let me back out on the streets right now, I will be a dead man by the end of the week. I managed to make it 21 days before I got locked back up again. That was probably the best decision I had ever made in my life, and I know for a fact that it wasn't my words coming out of my mouth when I told the judge to do that. It had to have been a God thing. Because he had a plan and a purpose for me, and I didn't know what it was, and I still don't completely understand it. So, fast forward, I end up going to prison. About 3 months into it, I'm actually honest with the first CD assessment I've ever been given, and told them it was probably easier to tell you the things that I hadn't done than to try to tell you the things that I had and how many. They put me in an intensive inpatient in-prison treatment center in St. Cloud. And because I went to prison during COVID, I was supposed to be in medium custody, sent out to some cushy prison, but the only CD treatment program that they had running was in St. Cloud, a close custody facility. So in order to be released, I had to complete treatment. So I went there, and at first it was just one of those, like, I'm gonna go through the motions. And as I'm going through the motions, I realized, hey, look, this actually does look like my life. I might want to take a notion to this. About 3 months into in the letter, she's writing, best wishes, hope you get your act together, and P.S. at the bottom, God just had this little message for me to give to you. I hope it helps, and I hope you understand it, and I hope it helps. And the verse that she had written down there was Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. They are plans for good, not for disaster, to give you a future and a hope. And at the time, that was the exact word that I needed, because I thought my life had no plan, that everything that I had ever tried to accomplish or ever tried to do right blew up in my face, and anything that I had ever amounted to was nothing. I had a lot of time to sit and reflect on, like, all these grandiose schemes that I had in my head of, like, I'm gonna make it rich, I'm gonna be big, I'm gonna leave a good inheritance for my kids even though I can't see them, and all of that amounted to nothing. And that was the word that I needed to hear, and it really started to change and shape the way I looked at my own life and the way that I looked at God, the way that I looked at the relationships that actually meant something to me that I had been neglecting for so long. And from that moment on, my consistent prayer was, God, I don't know the plan you have for me, but you do. So just let your will be done, and just show me the next right step. And through that, God pushed me in the direction of, like, actually putting in the work, actually taking a hard look at my life and figuring out what was going wrong, what my character defects were, how did I fix them, what were the amends that I needed to make, the major amends that I needed to make. And I was able to start working on that, and through that I was able to get in contact with my daughter's mom first. I was able to send out letters to her, just hoping and praying that she would write back. eventually, after a few letters sent out with no reply, she writes me back. She gives me her phone number, and she's like, look, I don't trust you. You've been gone and you've been doing your own thing. But if you can keep in contact with me and show me that you're serious this time, then maybe down the road we can talk about you seeing your daughter or talking to your daughter. Through God pushing me to actually do the right thing, through me getting into the Word and actually like studying, I was actually able to start a couple of small group meetings while I was in the treatment unit that I was in. I was actually able to start a Bible study every Wednesday night in the treatment unit that I was in. And I was able to help others, even though I barely knew the way myself, I was able to help others understand what I was just beginning to comprehend. And then through the blessing of God, at the end of my stay in prison, I was left with an ultimatum. Do I go back to the old lifestyle, the old people, places, and things that I once knew, or do I try to find a different route? And even my CD counselor in prison was like, what is your plan? What is your aftercare plan? Like, where are you going from here? And I told him, honestly, I don't know. I'm a commit from Albert Lea, so I'm probably going back to Albert Lea, and they have no treatment anywhere around there. So it's a recipe for disaster. Last time I was released from Albert Lea Jail, I walked 2 blocks to the dope man's house and was high before noon. So he said, well, there are other places that you can go, but you have to go to a treatment place. You have to go to a treatment center from here in order to be able to stay in that area. So I started looking around, and the Teen Challenge here in Rochester was something that a couple of other guys had spoken into my life that I had been doing these Bible studies with, these small meetings, and they're like, we've been through here, one of us didn't really succeed, the other one went all the way through and just relapsed later on in life, but they were like, if you really are serious about getting close to God and getting sober, this is the place for you to go. And I was like, you know what? Where 2 or 3 have spoken into your life, it's got to be a God thing. I probably should listen, especially because my consistent prayer is, God, just show me the next right step and I'll walk. So I applied to come down here. And it's also a blessing of God that through these meetings, I met the love of my life. My wife of almost a year now, I met through this meeting, through one of the other sober recovery meetings. We met and we did it God's way. I was like, I'm not looking for a relationship. I've been burned too many times, but if this is what develops, I'm not gonna complain. And we were both like God-centered from the very beginning. Like, we're gonna do this right. We're gonna make sure that there's nothing before marriage. We're gonna make sure that we work through our problems and put God in the forefront of it. And we dated 8 months. 9 months while I was living at Network for Life. And finally, towards the end of my stay in Network for Life, me and her decided that we were going to tie the knot. We actually got married right here on this stage. And that brings our happy little total family up to a 5 count now, because I not only have my wife, I have my other 2 kids, and then I have my awesome, awesome stepdaughter. And through God working and changing in my life, I was able to build the relationships back with the 2 kids that I had once thought were completely gone. I am now a consistent, daily, it's not a daily I get to see them, but it's a daily that I at least get to hear their voice, which is something that I never thought was going to happen again. Thanks to God working in my life and being able to open up some avenues, we're hoping to get my daughter up here for the summer next year for at least a week. I get to see my son at least once a month. Usually we can work out a play date. And I get to spend time with my stepdaughter every day. I say stepdaughter, she's my daughter. She's my daughter. And I can't believe how much God has done in my life because I was just willing to let go and let Him do it. And I was even willing to put in the first step. Like, that's all I asked God was the direction, and I will put in the steps. And because I put in the steps, God gave me so many directions, and He continues to do it. One thing I did want to share is, I had mentioned before a whole bunch of shame and a whole bunch of guilt that I had felt in my life. For my second sobriety date anniversary, my wife gave me this cross necklace, and it's got my sobriety date on it. It's October 29th, 2020 is my sobriety date. And then as I was reading the other day, I ran across Colossians 2, verse 14. He canceled the record of our charges against us and took it away by nailing it to the cross. And it just made me think of that. Like, when I finally decided to surrender and I accepted God and I started walking with God, He took all my shame, all my guilt, all my addiction, all my struggle, all my pain, and He nailed it to the cross. He took it upon Himself to save me from myself. And that is grace right there. And that is something that grace is an unmerited gift. It's something that we can't earn. It's something that we can't buy, we can't have. It's something freely given. And it's something that only God can give in that sense. And I'm so grateful for the grace that He's given me because I definitely don't deserve it. And there's nothing I can ever do to obtain it. But I'm able to walk freely in it every day because of the price He paid for me. So the least I can do is try to be the willing vessel that can bring light and bring hope to someone else, and be the feet and the hands that move and that go. And with that, I think my time is just about up. But I just have one last thing to say. If we're all willing to be the one that says, I'm here, God, send me, He will use that and do miraculous things. That's all I've got.